Okay, we have our switch installed, we have our Y adapter installed, we have the motor mounts installed. It's now time to install the extruders. Um, we have the two green kit extruders that we have included in the kit, as well as the motors. Now I'm going to take the motors and just set them up here just to make sure that I have enough space for everything, and I do. As you can see, I have a nice gap in between them here. That gap is going to be used to hold the cables. Let's go ahead and open up these extruder kits. In the extruder kits, you will see that we have green, what we call the action arm, the lever arm. We have the extruder block itself, as well as a small green bushing that drops right down inside of the extruder arm. So there's one of those for the left side, and there's one of those for the right side. There we go. So we're going to take those. Inside, in addition to that, there's a set of components that are going to be used to actually build out the extruder, and as we mount it to the motor here. So the first thing that we want to do is to let's go ahead and take everything out of that. By the way, I want you to be careful of one element here. In each one of the extruder bags, there's also another green bushing. Do not use the ones from the bags. Use the one from the little bags inside of it. So the green extruder bushings that came inside of those little bags are actually sized for a different machine, and we will not be needing those. You can discard those. Make sure that the bushings you have actually will fall in and drop out of the arms on both sides. So both of them do that. That's all you need to do to validate that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our two extruder blocks, and we're going to go ahead and screw in the white PTFE adapters that are included, just like that. We'll then go ahead and there are two longer angled beveled edge screws that are going to go into these beveled holes. So there's one there and one for the other side here. Now you want to be careful. There's actually a shorter version and a longer version. Because we're going through the metal frame, we want to use the longer version. So again, those shorter beveled screws, you can actually discard those. So we have both the left and the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to install these so that the tube connects to the outside edge, because the lever is on that side as well. I'm sorry, on the inside edge. The tubes are going to come up through the middle on the outside of the motor, and the levers are going to be on the far outside. So we're going to have it configured like this. So let me go ahead and take my little screw. Again, this is the 2mm. And we're going to mount the motor to the back side, and the screw on the front side with the green adapter. Just like that. We'll do the same thing with the other side. Now these don't have to be perfectly tight just yet. We'll get there in a second. So now there are four, actually there's a bunch more of them, extra ones, but we're going to use the button head version, not the flat head or the beveled edge. This is the button head, and we're going to put one of those in each one of these holes. And we'll go ahead and tighten them in place. once you have those three installed in one of the extruders, you can go ahead and tighten them all down because everything else is locked in correctly. The next thing that we're going to install are the extruder drive gears. The extruder drive gears are actually held in place by two grub screws, small Allen set screws if you will. These are brass, so there are two screws and we're going to install one on each one of the drive axes. Now the reason why we're installing them afterwards is because we get the alignment correct if we actually just use the metal plate as the surface that we're attaching to. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these screws up so that they can slide onto the motors. And basically I'm looking on the inside here. I can see the black screw sticking inside there. That means it will not be able to slide on. So if I back this all the way out, I now have it backed out where this I know will slide on. Just like that. And I'm just going to make it flush with the front of the extruder housing. So the front of this is flush with this, and we then can go ahead and tighten that in place. Remember, there are two screws, so those are both tight, and we'll loosen these out. Perfect. So now I have two of those mounted. Back to the top of these, there are two additional screw holes that we're going to just take again. Same screws that we use here, we're going to put them down through these holes right here. Those are the bottom spring catches. Okay. Now there are two more remaining versions of those screws. We're going to go ahead and mount those to the bottom of the arms here. There's one on each side. And we'll screw those in all the way as well. These are the top catches for the springs. The last part of these arms is installing the bearings that are actually going to be the idlers for the filament. There are two M4 by 8 screws. We need to put the small lock washer on them first, and then one of the bearings, and that will mount directly to the inside of the extruder arm here. Screw that in. Parts fall out. Let's go ahead and use the same drive that we use. That's a 3mm. Go ahead and tighten that down. We'll do that for both of them. So we have our lock washer on the screw, then the bearing, and then we screw that into place. So now we have two completed arms. The bearing should turn freely, and it does. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to drop these longer M3 by 20 screws into the case, into the arm, I should say, the bushing. Let's go ahead and set one down. So these are actually going to go into that remaining hole, but we need to get this spring in here first. So we put the spring on the top and the bottom, and we rotate it just so that'll hold it in place. We can then use our M2.5 screw and tighten that in place. I found that if you compress the spring a little bit, it makes that screw go in a lot easier. Just like that. And we'll do that for the last one. Press the spring, screw it in. There you go. So there we have our two extruders mounted. We have the Y adapters. The only thing left to do is actually hook up our wiring up to the top here. And what we're going to do is we are going to take one of the wires, and if you take a look very carefully, you can see one is actually connected to the left side and one is connected to the right side. The one that's on the right side is actually the left motor. And in this case, that is this cable right here. This motor goes over to this side. This motor, the left side, connects to the right side. The right side connects to the left. It's kind of funny because the switches are aligned so that when it's pressed in, we're activating this motor. When it's pressed out, it's activating this motor. So we want, when it's pressed in, it actually activates this side, which is this motor. So we're going to use this and plug it into the right-hand motor, or the left-hand motor here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to see if I can move that a little bit over out of the way. Well, I'll get back in and tighten those up in a second here. Now, with that in place, this motor is ready to go. But this cable needs to be modified ever so slightly. Right now it is blue, red, green, black. With blue, red, green, black, it's going to turn the motor in one direction. But because this motor is actually spinning in the opposite direction, we actually need to reverse these cables. So to do that, I'm going to utilize my little knife here, or my little razor blade. I'm not cutting anything. I'm simply using it to raise the ends of these catches that hold the cable in place. So if I raise that up, I can then pull the cable out. So in this case, let's do blue and black. We're just swapping them. Press that back in. There's one. And there's the other. And now we'll do the same for the middle two pair, the red and the green. So there's the red out. And the green out. Move the green over one, plug it right back in. And we'll plug the red back into here. Now, changing of the wiring is actually required because several different manufacturers of printers actually have different wirings. So what we need to do is we need to convert left and right, as well as to correct for any of the other idiosyncrasies in their wiring. So we now have the wiring done. I've gone ahead and plugged it in. The next step is to literally take our PTFE tube and connect it from here to here. fired up. So let's go ahead and take that off there. That off there. Now the cable, or the PTFE tube, this is about the length of this table, which is about 2 meters. We're just going to cut it right in half. We don't really need that long of a cable, that long of a tube. We want it maybe about that long is actually all we need. So let's just go ahead and set these up. Again, your printer is going to be different. This happens to be the Ender 3. You can use any printer that you want to install this. I'm just going to cut both these at the same time, same length. Now I have 2 cables, 2 tubes that are the same length. I'm going to put one on one side, and I'm going to put the other one on the other side. Just like we did here, you want to make sure you get them all the way down inside. Now I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm actually going to have them cross over each other at the top, kind of like a heart. You also want to make sure you get it, once you get it in, it goes all the way down in there. The reason why I crossed it over is because I'm actually going to use some zip ties just to kind of hold this back so that it keeps it nice and flat and we get a nice smooth arc. And that's it. We've now installed the Ender 3. From a mechanical perspective, the next thing that we're going to do is go ahead and actually tune the motor current specifically for this printer. And in the next video, I'll show you that.